To begin our routing journey, I'm going to have to get rid of these two. So this is essentially what we've got left on app.js. So what you do is you go ahead and in the root create a route folder. I was adding a file, a route folder, and in the route folder you're going to create a file essentially for every route. So we're going to group our routes semantically. If we have a route called login, we also need a route for register, and we need a route for forgot password. We can all agree that these three routes and whatever other routes that relate to them could be under the class authentication, essentially. So in that case, we go ahead and create a route for authentication. When we have routes like add category, remove category, edit, we could go ahead and move these into a route or a route file or group them into a module called categories. So the problem, however, comes up when it starts diverting from just grouping things semantically to having other meaning behind things. For example, we have add category, remove category, and edit category. But then these things fall under categories. We also have fetch category. Now, these four things are under the module category, but then remember that these three should only be accessible to admins. Admins should be the only people who add categories to the store. Admins should be the only people who have access to remove categories. They also should be the only people who can edit categories, but the users should be able to also fetch categories. So users should be able to do this alone, and these people should be able to do this alone. So sometimes semantics alone or single scoped semantics do not work by grouping them like that. You sometimes have to look even deeper and maybe separate them by access and roles and all that. So in this case, these three will fall under admin routes and these will fall under a different route. So in that case, our very first thing would be authentication. So we create a new file and call that auth.js. Now in here, we're going to have to create a route. Now remember how we've created routes before. Let me go back, restore what we had. So what we did was use the app instance of the express object, and we caused the .get, or it could be a .post, it could be a .put, it could be a delete as well. Now these four CRUD operations are available on the express object, but when we move, because this was available in here, but when we move over to a different file, so now we're in a different module, totally different module. If we go ahead and create a new app in express, and we go ahead and use this app to create a route, app.get register. Now, how exactly is the main page going to know about this registration, this route defined here? It's not going to know about it because we already have an app defined here, and we're not using this app to instantiate the route or to declare the route, because this app that we've used to listen to this server should be aware of all the routes, because we've also used it for the middlewares. Now the middlewares are attached to this app object, this very app instance, and this app instance and these middlewares will work when a route that has been declared on this object is called or it's triggered. So in this case we have a totally new one over here. The only way we could actually solve this would be to take this and pass it down to every route file. That could get very hectic. So there was born an easy way to do this, and that was the express object having a router attached to it. So the router also comes from the app, so it could be app.router, as you can see. So this router, this little router that was instantiated over here, so it actually comes, sorry, dot router, right? Perfect, yeah. So you invoke it and it gets you the instance of the object. So this router will also let you define a route. So router.get, router.post, put, and delete. You can do all of those. But then where it actually comes in handy is that we can actually come in here and use it, say, attach it to the already existing app object. So let me take it back a little bit. We have this router that's created from a new instance of the app object. Now this app object is not this one. This one's already been used to register middlewares, to start listening to or to open the server, but then in order to create routes that will actually be connected to the middlewares and trigger the middlewares and also have the server listen to them, we would actually need to do that on the same app object. Now, in order to do that, we would then have to take this, pass it down to every route file we will create, because we're actually going to be creating a lot of them. We'll actually have to pass all of those down to them. Now, there's a simpler way to do that. That is by creating a router from a new instance or whatever instance of the express instance that you can get. Create a router out of it. Now use that router to register routes. Now get an instance of that router. Now in order to get an instance or expose the router's instance, we could go ahead and do something I think this is connected to JavaScript itself, called module.export. So it's actually connected to Node.js, and the exports will be, so we're saying that everything that this module, this entire module, or this file is exporting would be the router object. Now, whatever other file imports this file will be able to access this router object. So this is essentially what we do to every route file that we're going to create. We go ahead, instantiate a new router, use that router to create or to declare routes, then we expose that router. Now, in the main app.js file, we go ahead and get an instance of each router. So let's say, for example, the auth router will be equal to, we import, so require, and we go into, so this is the app.js, so we could go into the routes, route / that is auth.js. This should actually show me or make it work. Let's see, there's a ./ work, yes. So it should automatically do that for you, and you could go to, yes, routes auth.js. Now, after doing that, you could go ahead and connect that router. So when I hold down Option on Mac and Control on Windows or whatever else, and click on this, it takes me directly to that router, as you can see. So I've essentially got an instance of this router in here. So with this, I could go ahead and plug it into the main app object. So now I don't have to take this app object and send it over to other files. I can actually export the object from other modules and then bring them directly to this person. So we don't take this person to them, we bring them to this person. Now in here, we could go ahead and use the auth router. So this is essentially how it's going to work for every other route that we create. This is how we're going to be creating all routes. Go ahead and complete that to the auth router, and that is it. So this would actually work. However, now in here we could have quite a number of routes. So we could have let's see, login, and you have your request response, just like we've already done before, and it needs an arrow. Perfect. Now we also have router.get. So sorry, login and register are both post requests, and we go ahead and do the same for register, and we could go ahead and copy this bit. Now this would work because what we're doing here is just listening to the auth router, or using the auth, or registering the authentication router. So when our user tries to hit, or when the client actually tries to access the login route, it reads every registered route. For example, if we had multiple app.users over here, it reads all of them. Let me delete this bit. It reads all of them and then finds any route that matches this, or matches the thing that the user is trying to visit. In our case, we've actually got two of them. But then, like I was already trying to say, we would, if we had a more complicated route than this, so this is /login/register, and this is actually pretty simple, right? It's just / and what you're going to, / and what you're going to. Now, in some cases, if I created a new file, let's see, users, no, maybe products, that's a lot better, .js. Now, if, for example, we had products.js, we would have something like router.get, and we would have to do products / the ID of a product, ID, something like this. So in such a case, it would also probably have a different route like delete, and that would be / products / the ID of a product that we need to delete. Now you can see that there's a pattern forming here. So what could we also do? We could also do a put for updating the product. So it could be / products / ID. As you can see, we're repeating products over and over and over and over again. Now, in order to take away this repetition and simply simplify every route and make every module aware of its base route, in order to do that, we can actually do that. We can go ahead and cut this bit out, and in the part where we actually register the router in the app.use, this is going to be the products router. Yeah, products router require, and we go to routes products.js. Perfect. Now you can go ahead and skip the .js, or you could totally include that, but I'm definitely going to ignore that because it's a lot longer. Now we could go ahead and do the products router, but in order to make this app.use aware of where to search for, or where to directly go to, we could go ahead and pass the base route over here. Now in our case, this was for products. So whenever someone visits a route like http dot s dot thebesttech.com / products / ID, some random mumbo jumbo. Whenever someone visits this, the app.use will get triggered, and it will check first if there's any routes that uses the products, the / products, because it's the first thing after the domain. So it checks. Now it doesn't have to go into each router to check because we've already declared that over here. So now this middleware is aware that everything in here is going to be / products. So it goes into this bit, it goes into this middleware and goes into its router, and then inside of this router it will go ahead and check if there's any router, or if there's any defined route that first of all matches the HTTP method, in this case a get. It checked, yes, a get exists. It goes ahead and checks again anything that is taking something after the first /, and it checks, yes, there's a route that is get, and it's also taking something right after the first /, and that is a variable, because we've put a colon. This is how we declare a variable, that we're accepting variables on this route. So it goes ahead and it finds that there's someone accepting something after that's also a get request, and it goes ahead and it calls whatever we've put here. In our case, usually the request response callback that handles the request. So this is how routing essentially works. Now, in some cases, you actually might have to have similar routes. So say, for example, we want to get a router.get products slash count. So now what we're actually trying to do is get the count of all products in the database. So the URL will definitely look like this. It will be a get, it will be / products. Now we actually don't need this bit because we've already declared that here. So you could go ahead and remove that bit, but I'm leaving it in to just show you the example. This for the example. Now normally, because we've already added that there, we know now that everything in here is / products. So we could go ahead and remove the / products and just have / ID. So it would simply append it to the main app. So it will be / products, goes in here and checks / the next thing. So it would be / product / the variable ID. So, but then for the example purpose and to portray what I'm trying to portray, I'm actually going to leave it in there. So moving on, what if we actually have a route that looks like this? It could be anything at all. It could be products / count. Now these routes are beginning to match. Now when a user visits this stuff right here, it will actually go ahead, like I already told you, deconstruct this URL and take the very first part, and that will match a middleware, which is products. It will go into that middleware router. Now when it does that, it will fall through and come in here. Now it will go ahead and check the next bit of the URL, which is this. Now it's already found this. It's finally going to try and match this bit. Now it checks, is there any get method that actually take a variable ID or take, it will first check if it takes this, if it takes this. So if there's any route that actually matches this, it will go ahead and call that route. If there's not, it will simply check if there's anyone that takes a variable, and in this case, this one takes a variable, and that will be the ID of the product. It will go ahead and pass that ID to this variable, and that is it. This is done. Now, what if the user was actually not trying to find the product's details, and they were rather trying to find the count of all products in the database? Now, that will actually go to save. That will actually go to product / count. Now it will find this and it will go into the products router, take this bit, come in here, try to find any get methods. Now the reason why I'm so focused on the get requests and not even talking about how we've got very similar routes in put and delete. Now this will also be / products if we didn't have that. But the reason why I'm ignoring these is because the first thing it actually tries to match is the method. So if the user has called a get method, it actually won't go to the delete and even start trying to match the route or the URL. Now that only happens in get. So in this case we have two gets and we have a products which we've already matched over there, and we can totally remove that right here because we've already put that there. Now, the next thing it tries to do is to find, remember what I told you, it tries to find a / count. During the deconstruction of the URL, it will go ahead and try to find it. Now, in this case, it's got the literal word count. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to go into this route and take the count as a word and pass it as the value of this variable. Now, the value of this variable will be count. So in this variable, in this path, if we're actually going to take the ID to be equal to request dot, I told you that this would be params dot ID because the names have to match. So it will actually take the count and pass it in as the ID. So this ID will then become equal to count. Right, so you see what it's doing. It doesn't know, or it's not aware that this doesn't match an ID. All it knows is that this person is asking for something after the first /. So it's going to take that something and put it in there without getting to this route. So this route never gets triggered. Now this person is busy searching for a product that's got the ID count. The ID's equal to count in the database, and it's not going to find that product, and therefore it's going to return a 404 error to the user. But then the user has actually put in, or the client, not the user, has actually put in the correct ID. So in such cases, what you want to do is actually take the route that is not taking a variable and pass it directly over. the one that takes a variable. So this one gets the first priority. So priority matters, order matters. So always put the ones that have got the variables after the ones that don't have a variable and want a particular or a specific word. So in this case, count as the word we want. Go ahead and put that first, and that solves the issue for you. So when it comes in here, it checks and it checks if there's anyone who has an extra forward slash, and in this case it finds count and it matches the counts. So whenever the user passes the ID rather, it will check, first of all, if this ID matches the count. It doesn't match the count. It will go ahead and move on to the next one and it will check here. And this, the reason why it will always match this one whenever there's any string is because this is a variable. So it doesn't know what it wants. It doesn't know what it wants. But this one's not a variable. It doesn't have a colon before it, so it's specific. It's very specific. It wants only count. So whatever doesn't match count, it doesn't take it. But this one is not specific. It wants anything at all. This is why this is here. So it takes that thing and it gives it the value ID. So this should solve your issue. So remember, always order these on the first. So now that's essentially how your routing would work. You take these routes and then you would export them again. So remember, for every module, you want to do that module.exports and you export the router.